Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar is right. Trinidad and Tobago became lawless under Rowley's watch. An editorial by Professor Wall Street. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar's recent statement that Trinidad and Tobago has become a lawless dump under previous PNM governance has triggered predictable outrage from those most responsible for creating the conditions she accurately describes. Former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, who presided over the first, second, and third highest murder rates in Trinidad and Tobago's history, has the audacity to criticize the current Prime Minister for stating what every citizen knows, that lawlessness flourished during his decade in power. Rowley's attack on Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar represents stunning lack of self-awareness from someone whose governance produced exactly the lawless conditions she's now working to address. Under Rowley's watch from 2015 to 2025, Trinidad and Tobago consistently ranked within the top 10 countries globally for murders per capita. If that doesn't constitute a lawless society, what does? Current PNM opposition leader and political leader also served in Rowley's government throughout this catastrophic decade, making her equally complicit in the lawlessness she now defends. And Michaela Pandey's criticism is entirely predictable. Her patriotic front has become the PNM front, producing weekly vendetta attacks against Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar regardless of substance. The fundamental question these critics refuse to address: if Trinidad and Tobago isn't a lawless society after ranking among the world's most murderous countries for years, after gang violence terrorized communities, after corruption flourished unchecked, after basic rules were routinely ignored, then what would constitute lawlessness? The Prime Minister stated uncomfortable truth that Rowley and his enablers prefer to deny, because acknowledging it requires accepting responsibility for creating the conditions she inherited. Rather than attacking the leader cleaning up his mess, Rowley should hang his head in shame for leaving Trinidad and Tobago in the lawless state that now requires dramatic intervention to restore order and safety. Here are 10 reasons why Rowley should hang his head in shame rather than criticize his successor cleaning up his mess. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar is absolutely correct about lawlessness. 1. Top 10 global murder rate defines lawless society. The single most damning fact Rowley cannot escape. Under his governance from 2015 to 2025, Trinidad and Tobago consistently ranked within the top 10 countries globally for murders per capita, homicide rate per 100,000 people. The specific statistics are devastating. 2024, 625 murders, 45.7 per 100,000 people, highest in history. 2023, second highest murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago history. 2022, third highest murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago history. Total, over 5,000 citizens murdered during Rowley's decade. Trinidad and Tobago was more dangerous than Jamaica, more murderous than most Latin American countries, comparable to war zones in terms of citizen safety. If this doesn't constitute lawless society, the term has no meaning. Rowley presided over this carnage. His National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines was catastrophic failure. His policies produced an environment where criminal organizations operated with impunity, where gang violence terrorized communities, where citizens lived in fear. This represents textbook definition of lawlessness, states' inability or unwillingness to maintain order and protect citizens. For Rowley to now criticize Prime Minister for accurately describing conditions he created represents either complete lack of self-awareness or cynical hope that citizens have forgotten the bloodbath he presided over. 2. Gang violence and criminal impunity flourished. Beyond raw murder numbers, lawlessness under Rowley manifested in systematic gang violence and criminal organizations operating virtually unchecked, territorial gang conflicts in urban areas, brazen daylight murders, kidnappings for ransom, drug trafficking networks operating openly, weapons proliferation throughout communities, witness intimidation preventing prosecutions, criminal organizations more powerful than state institutions in some areas. This represents classic failed state dynamics, where non-state actors, gangs, criminal organizations, exercise more effective control than government in certain territories and population. Citizens in many communities lived under effective gang rule rather than state authority. Rowley's government proved unable or unwilling to address this systematic lawlessness. His national security apparatus failed comprehensively. His policies produced no measurable improvement despite decades in power. The result? Lawless society where criminal organizations flourished while law-abiding citizens suffered. 3. Corruption became normalized and systematic. Lawlessness isn't just violent crime, it's also systematic corruption, where rules don't apply to connected individuals and accountability mechanisms fail. Cabo Star scandal, $1.6 billion wasted on vessel leased at $152,000 per day through corrupt procurement, reduced after public outcry but never properly investigated. Pharmaceutical monopoly, brazen price fixing and market manipulation allowed to flourish, hurting poorest citizens while connected businesses enriched themselves. Construction contracts, systematic favoritism, cost overruns, unfinished projects, minimal accountability. State enterprise mismanagement, Petrotrin closure devastating workers, while executives face no consequences for decades of mismanagement. This systematic corruption represents lawlessness at institutional level, where rules exist but aren't enforced for connected individuals, where accountability mechanisms are ignored, where public resources are systematically diverted to private benefit without consequence. 4. Basic rules and regulations routinely ignored. Lawlessness manifested daily in citizens' routine violation of basic rules with no enforcement. Traffic laws, reckless driving, illegal parking, dangerous overtaking with minimal enforcement. Noise regulations, constant violations with ineffective response. Building codes, illegal construction proceeding without consequence. Environmental regulations, systematic violations ignored. Business regulations, operating without proper permits or adherence to standards. This created an environment where following rules became optional and those who violated them faced minimal consequences. Law-abiding citizens suffered while rule breakers operated with impunity. This represents textbook lawlessness, not absence of laws, but absence of enforcement creating functional environment where laws don't matter. 5. Rowley's hateful, spiteful, and vindictive projection. Rowley's characterization of Prime Minister's governance as hateful, spiteful, and vindictive represents stunning projection from someone whose own governance was defined by these exact qualities. Rowley's actual hateful statements, calling then opposition leader she-cat, using term geometry in derogatory manner. Golf course is like a woman. You have to groom her every day. Imps, pimps, and chimps. Various racially charged statements. Rowley's vindictive actions. Deliberately keeping Couva Hospital closed for decades. Refusing worker wage increases. Targeting political opponents through state apparatus. Manufacturing crises to damage opposition. Rowley accusing Prime Minister of being hateful, spiteful, and vindictive, while his own record demonstrates these qualities, represents either complete lack of self-awareness or cynical attempt to weaponize accusations he himself embodied. 6. Current opposition leader equally complicit. The current PNM opposition leader and political leader served throughout Rowley's government, making her equally responsible for the lawlessness that flourished. She cannot distance herself from record she helped create. She was part of cabinet that presided over record murders, part of government that failed to address gang violence, part of administration that allowed corruption to flourish. Her criticism of Prime Minister's lawless society assessment represents attempt to avoid accountability for conditions she helped create. Citizens should recognize that those who served in government producing lawlessness have no credibility criticizing leader working to restore order. 7. Makela Pandey's PNM front propaganda continues. Pandey's criticism of Prime Minister's statement represents predictable weekly installment in her endless vendetta. The Patriotic Front has become PNM Front, producing weekly attacks serving PNM political interests while pretending to represent independent concern. Pandey's pattern throughout 2025. Universal criticism, regardless of merit, weekly attacks maintaining constant pressure, never acknowledging UNC achievements, complete PNM protection through silence about their catastrophic record. Her criticism of lawless society assessment follows this pattern, attacking straightforward truth because it serves her vendetta while protecting PNM from accountability for actually creating the lawlessness. 8. Prime Minister is cleaning up Rowley's mess. Most important context Rowley ignores. Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar is actively addressing the lawlessness he created. Crime reduction. 47% reduction in serious crimes to enhance security cooperation. Improve detection capacity. Gang disruption producing measurable results. Institutional reform. Addressing corruption. Improving accountability. Restoring public confidence in state institutions. Rule enforcement. Enhanced focus on actually enforcing existing laws rather than allowing routine violations. Community safety. Restoring citizens' confidence that state can actually protect them and maintain order. Prime Minister's lawless society assessment isn't an attack on Trinidad and Tobago. It's honest acknowledgement of conditions she inherited that require dramatic intervention. Her statement serves to establish baseline against which progress can be measured, not insult citizens suffering under conditions Rowley created. 9. Lawless dump reflects citizen experience. Prime Minister's characterization, however blunt, reflects what ordinary citizens experience daily under PNM governance. Fear walking streets after dark. Businesses closing early due to security concerns. Parents terrified for children's safety. Communities terrorized by gang violence. Routine rule violations making daily life chaotic. Systematic corruption making honest living harder. These experiences constitute lawless dump citizens endured while Rowley's government failed to protect them. Prime Minister's statement validates citizens' suffering rather than insulting them, acknowledging that their fear and frustration about lawlessness was justified, not exaggerated. 10. Rowley should hang his head in shame. Most fundamentally, Rowley has no moral standing to criticize anyone for stating truth about lawlessness he created. His decade produced worst murder rates in history, systematic gun violence, and criminal impunity, normalized corruption, failed institutions, terrorized citizens, lawless environment where rules didn't matter. Rather than attacking Prime Minister cleaning up his catastrophic legacy, Rowley should acknowledge his government's comprehensive failures, apologize to citizens who suffered under lawlessness he allowed to flourish, accept responsibility for creating conditions requiring dramatic intervention, support efforts to restore order rather than defend an indefensible record, hang his head in shame for leaving Trinidad and Tobago in lawless state. His criticism of Prime Minister represents final insult. Failing to protect citizens for decades, then attacking successor for honestly describing the disaster she inherited and is working to address. In conclusion, truth hurts, but denial is worse. Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar's lawless society assessment is absolutely correct. Trinidad and Tobago became lawless under Rowley's watch. Top 10 global murder rate, systematic gang violence, normalized corruption, failed institutions, routine rule violations with no enforcement. These aren't opinions subject to debate. They're documented facts reflected in crime statistics, citizen experiences, and international rankings. Rowley's criticism represents desperate attempt to avoid accountability by attacking messengers stating uncomfortable truth. Citizens recognize reality. Trinidad and Tobago did become lawless under P&M governance. They lived through the fear, experienced the violence, witnessed the corruption, and suffered the consequences of Rowley's comprehensive failures. Prime Minister's statement validates their experience rather than insults them. Rowley should hang his head in shame rather than criticize. He presided over worst violence in history, allowed lawlessness to flourish, failed to protect citizens, and left successor with massive mess requiring dramatic intervention to restore order. Prime Minister is cleaning up that mess, reducing crime 47%, addressing institutional failures, restoring accountability, and actually enforcing rules. Her honest assessment of inherited conditions serves this restoration effort by establishing baseline against which progress can be measured. Trinidad and Tobago needs truth, not diplomatic euphemisms protecting those responsible for creating disasters. Prime Minister provided that truth. Citizens who suffered under lawlessness, Rowley created recognized accuracy of her assessment. And those genuinely committed to restoring order understand that you cannot fix what you refuse to name. Rowley can attack the truth. Pandey can continue her vendetta. But citizens know what they experienced, recognize who created the lawlessness, and understand who's actually working to address it. Prime Minister's statement was correct, necessary, an overdue acknowledgement of reality Rowley left behind, while he should hang his head in shame for creating it.